stare into the endless, pitch-black abyss of cosmic eternity. If we were to compress the entire 14-billion-year history of our universe into a single 24-hour day, the birth of our home planet wouldn't happen until late in the afternoon. About 4.5 billion years ago, there was nothing here but a giant, chaotic, swirling mess of glowing gas and stardust, basically the worst neighborhood in the galaxy. In this unimaginable cosmic crucible, gravity, which never takes a day off, forced microscopic particles together until they formed massive boulders. The young sun, a blazing nuclear furnace in the center of this mayhem, whipped radiation into the dark, while heavier elements were relentlessly dragged inward. This is how our Earth was born. Not as the pale blue dot we know today, but as an absolutely hostile, boiling ocean of liquid magma, constantly getting sucker-punched by asteroids the size of mountain ranges. This infernal nursery was a place of limitless destruction. But the young Earth's biggest bad day was yet to come. From the dark depths of the early solar system, another restless protoplanet named Theia, a titanic rock about the size of Mars, was hurtling toward us with no brakes. Moving at tens of thousands of miles per hour, Theia slammed into Earth in a catastrophic cosmic hit-and-run. The impact literally ripped the outer crust of our world to shreds, launching trillions of tons of molten rock into orbit and leaving the planet as a spinning ball of fire. From the massive rings of debris dancing around the Earth, gravity eventually clumped together our loyal, silent nighttime companion, the Moon. But this brutal collision wasn't the end. It was the fiery starting gun for a chain reaction that would change the face of this rock forever. Something incredible was brewing beneath the charred crust. Millions of years passed, and the planet's glowing temper tantrum slowly began to cool. By about 4 billion years ago, a solid crust had formed, but the sky looked straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Rust-red, toxic, and heavy with volcanic gases. Meanwhile, the Moon, which was terrifyingly close back then, dominated the horizon like a giant silhouette. This was the era of the late heavy bombardment. Countless comets and meteorites rained down on the dark basalt crust. But these celestial missiles brought a seemingly insignificant cargo that would become the ultimate game-changer: crystallized water. Drop by drop, over countless millennia, Earth's relentless gravity hijacked this cosmic payload. Slowly but surely, the dry hellscape transformed into a boundless water world, with near-boiling oceans churned by skyscraper-sized tsunamis triggered by the gravity of the massive Moon. Deep down in the pitch-black abyss of this primordial ocean, far away from any sunlight, the Earth's crust kept cracking open. Boiling hydrothermal vents, known as black smokers, spewed mineral-rich fluids into the absolute darkness. And right there, in the most sketchy, hostile, and toxic environment imaginable, surrounded by poison and volcanic heat, the craziest miracle in the universe happened. Out of a random chemical lottery of amino acids and proteins, the very first spark of biology ignited. The first microscopic, single-celled bacteria saw the light of day, or rather, the dim glow of the magma vents. They had no nucleus, they were blind, and they floated aimlessly in the primordial soup. But hey, they were alive. They were tiny, fragile, and at the mercy of the tides. Nobody could have guessed that these primitive little blobs would soon develop a biological weapon capable of nearly driving the entire planet to suicide. We jump forward a few eons. About 3.5 billion years ago, a new evolutionary pioneer entered the chat: cyanobacteria. These guys banded together to form massive, slimy reefs called stromatolites in the shallow, sunlit coastal waters. And these unassuming blobs invented a process that worked like pure magic: photosynthesis. They literally ate sunlight and water and expelled a waste product that, until then, was incredibly rare on Earth: oxygen. For hundreds of millions of years, these reefs tirelessly breathed this highly reactive, invisible gas into the atmosphere. But what started as a massive W for life turned into Earth's first global climate disaster. And yeah, biology caused it. Back then, the atmosphere was mostly methane, a powerful greenhouse gas that kept the Earth as warm and cozy as a winter blanket. The new oxygen aggressively reacted with the methane, destroying its insulating effect and stripping the planet of its heat shield. The sun was much weaker back then anyway, so temperatures absolutely plummeted. The Earth froze over into a giant white ice ball. This snowball Earth scenario, also known as the Huronian glaciation, covered even the equator in a thick, impenetrable shell of ice. Almost all early life was mercilessly wiped out, or banished to tiny volcano-warmed safe houses deep beneath the ice. The Earth had become a silent, sterile freezer. But while the white surface was dead quiet, the restless heart of the planet kept boiling deep inside. Massive magmatic convection currents pushed tectonic plates around until a supercontinent called Rodinia formed. And soon, the volcanic heat from the belly of the Earth would be strong enough to blow its icy prison wide open. When the giant volcanoes finally punched through the mile-thick ice, they pumped insane amounts of greenhouse gases back into the atmosphere. The Earth thawed out, and the retreating glaciers washed massive amounts of nutrients straight into the oceans. What happened next, about 540 million years ago, is known by scientists as the most mind-blowing chapter in evolution: the Cambrian explosion. Basically, evolution chugged 3 energy drinks and slammed on the gas pedal. Seemingly out of nowhere, the once boring oceans turned into vibrant, pulsating biological metropolises. The days of simple, soft blobs were over. Nature started dropping entirely new blueprints. Creatures with exoskeletons, sharp teeth, joints, and, most importantly, the first rudimentary eyes. Inventing vision was like turning on the lights in a dark room full of armed strangers. For the first time in Earth's history, animals could actively see each other. The concepts of predator and prey were born. Armored trilobites scuttled across the seafloor, while terrifying, almost mechanical-looking apex predators like Anomalocaris hunted them with razor-sharp appendages. The water became a ruthless battle royale, a biological arms race that forced the development of shells, spikes, and flight responses. But this massive underwater party was just the beginning, because while life was booming in the ocean, the bare, rocky landmass of the Earth was still a lethal, uninhabitable desert, completely exposed to the sun's deadly UV radiation. But deep within the tidal zones, a group of brave, or desperate, pioneers was about to make a completely insane move. Fast forward to about 300 million years ago, the Carboniferous period. The face of the Earth had dramatically changed. The once deadly sky was now shielded by a life-saving ozone layer. And life hadn't just conquered the land, it had absolutely overrun it. It was an era of extremes, an oppressive tropical paradise stretching across a newly united supercontinent called Pangaea. Where today we have deserts or icy wastelands, there were endless, impenetrable swamp forests. Giant fern trees shot up over 100 feet into the sky, creating a humid, muggy canopy where life exploded. The dead remains of these endless forests sank into the mud, eventually forming the black gold we mine today and call coal. But the craziest thing about this era was the air itself. Oxygen levels hit a dizzying 35%, almost double what it is today. And breathing that much oxygen triggered a biological phenomenon straight out of a B-movie horror script. Gigantism. Scorpion-like creatures the size of golden retrievers patrolled the damp underbrush. Millipedes the length of a car, absolute nightmare fuel called arthropleura, slithered silently across the rotting forest floor. And in the sky circled meganeura, terrifying dragonflies with the wingspan of a hawk. It was the undisputed empire of the arthropods. It seemed like life had won the ultimate victory, an endless golden age with no limits. But Earth's destiny has a rather sadistic sense of humor, and the mother of all disasters was already warming up in the bullpen. Here we are, about 252 million years ago, witnessing the most brutal paradigm shift in Earth's history, the Permian-Triassic mass extinction. Scientists respectfully call it the Great Dying, and it makes the dinosaur asteroid look like a minor inconvenience. It all started deep in the heart of what is now Siberia. Colossal bubbles of magma broke through the surface, turning a region the size of Western Europe into a boiling ocean of lava. These massive volcanic eruptions, the Siberian traps, didn't just last for years. They went on for hundreds of thousands of years. They spewed unbelievable amounts of toxic gases, ash, and billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the air. The global climate completely broke. Acid rain melted the forests, and the average temperature spiked to absurd levels. The oceans heated up like hot tub water, lost their oxygen, and turned into stagnant, acidic dead zones. Toxic bacteria bloomed and released poisonous hydrogen sulfide gas into the atmosphere, suffocating almost everything left on land. In a geological blink of an eye, vibrant coral reefs, vast forests, and majestic beasts vanished. A staggering 96% of all marine life and over 70% of land vertebrates were unceremoniously deleted from the server. The Earth was reduced to a smoldering, toxic wasteland. The board was completely wiped clean. Life was clinging to existence by a single, frayed thread. But from the toxic shadows of this apocalypse, a group of survivors crawled out, destined to rule the world with an iron fist for the next 150 million years. From the ruins of the Permian disaster rose the Archosaurs. About 230 million years ago, the world slowly began to breathe again, settling into a humid, tropical climate. Surprisingly, the first guys to claim this empty stage weren't the dinosaurs, but the great-grandparents of today's crocodiles. And these weren't the lazy swamp logs we know today. These ancient predators were highly agile, sometimes running on two legs, and they tore their prey to shreds. They completely dominated the early Mesozoic landscape, bullying the first, still tiny dinosaurs into the role of terrified extras hiding in the bushes, just trying not to become lunch. It took another mysterious biological crisis, because nature loves a hard reset, about 200 million years ago to wipe out most of these land crocs and banish the survivors to rivers and swamps forever. Finally, it was the dinosaurs' time to shine. Freed from their biggest competitors, they diversified into an insane variety of shapes and sizes. Gigantic herbivores like the sauropods made the earth shake with every ton-heavy step, using their necks like organic cranes to graze the tops of the highest conifers. Meat-eating theropods, fast, highly intelligent hunters, some already covered in primitive feathers, patrolled the dense fern landscapes. It was a golden age of giants, a literal Jurassic Park that would last for an unfathomable 150 million years. But while the dinosaurs were living their best lives, walking the warm continents like absolute kings, something insignificant was scurrying under their giant feet.
Small, furry little guys that only dared to leave their holes at night.
During this epic era of giants, the face of the Earth was getting a major tectonic facelift. About 150 million years ago, the massive supercontinent Pangaea slowly began to tear apart. Like a slow-motion divorce, massive landmasses drifted away from each other. Huge rifts opened up, seawater rushed in, and the early Atlantic Ocean was formed. Once united dinosaur populations were cut off from each other, which kicked evolution into overdrive. South America broke up with Africa, and Antarctica, which back then was covered in lush, green forests without a single cube of ice, sailed off toward the South Pole. The Earth was starting to look a lot like the map we know today, even if its residents would look like aliens to us. Hidden deep in the underbrush, constantly terrified of the booming footsteps of apex predators, our own ancestors were perfecting the art of not dying. We were the losers of the Mesozoic. These tiny, rat-like mammals rarely weighed more than a few ounces. The night was their only refuge, but this humiliating position forced them to come up with brilliant adaptations. They developed warm fur to survive the cold nights, incredibly sharp senses, and, most revolutionary of all, they started growing their young inside their bodies and feeding them nutrient-rich milk. These little shadow dwellers didn't need much energy to survive. They were just waiting for their big break. And at the end of the Cretaceous period, exactly 66 million years ago, a very bright, ominous light in the sky was about to hand it to them. The ultimate bad day arrived without warning. A massive asteroid, over 6 miles across and heavier than Mount Everest, slammed into the atmosphere at a mind-bending speed of 45,000 miles per hour. When it hit the coast of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, it unleashed a destructive force 2 million times more powerful than the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated by humans. The ocean evaporated instantly, and the Earth's crust was ripped wide open. A shockwave of pure fire raced across the continents at supersonic speeds, turning everything within thousands of miles to ash, while 300-foot tsunamis obliterated the coastlines. But the initial flash was just the opening act. The real horror came right after. Billions of tons of molten rock and toxic gases were blasted into space, only to rain back down as fiery shrapnel, igniting global wildfires. A massive cloud of ash and soot blotted out the sun. Photosynthesis ground to a halt, and global temperatures plummeted. For the majestic, multi-ton dinosaurs that needed massive amounts of food every single day, there was no escape. The lords of the earth quickly starved to death in a dark, freezing wasteland. Only one lucky branch of the theropod family survived, the birds we see today. The stage of the earth was once again covered in rubble and ash. The giants had fallen. But from the smoking ruins of the apocalypse, the eternal underdogs of evolution curiously poked their furry snouts into the freezing air. With the dinosaurs out of the picture 50 million years ago, the world was suddenly free real estate. This kicked off the most incredible victory lap in Earth's history, the age of mammals. The survivors left their nocturnal hideouts and exploded in an unprecedented evolutionary fireworks display. The continents kept shifting, the climate became tropically warm again, and mammals took on completely crazy new forms. Some looked at the ocean, decided walking was overrated, turned their legs into flippers, and became the massive whales of today. Others adapted to life on the wide plains, becoming the ancestors of horses and big cats. And a few weirdos retreated high into the canopy of the dense forests, our direct ancestors, the primates. But the constant dance of the tectonic plates soon messed with the climate again. About 34 million years ago, the Drake Passage opened up, finally separating Antarctica from South America. A massive, freezing ocean current wrapped around the southern continent like an invisible belt, cutting it off from the warm equatorial waters. The once green paradise froze into the hostile deep freeze we know today. Global average temperatures tanked, and the Earth entered a bipolar cycle of giant ice ages. Massive glaciers marched across the northern continents, melted, and came back again. In Africa, the lush forests began to shrink, making way for wide-open, dry savannas. This creeping loss of the protective trees forced some primates to leave the safety of the branches and risk it all down on the open ground. About 6 million years ago, the African continent set the stage for the most crucial chapter of our own story. As the thick rainforests gave way to dry savannas, a group of apes had to adapt to life on the ground. To see over the tall grass and spot hungry predators before it was too late, these creatures started to stand up. It was a slow, grueling process, but walking on two legs, bipedalism was born. Guys like Australopithecus roamed the plains, still rocking pretty small brains, but hey, their hands were free. Hands that could now hold sticks and stones, and eventually use them with deadly intent. Almost 2 million years ago, Homo erectus entered the chat, a species that looked surprisingly similar to us. This hunter-gatherer was no longer tied to a single habitat, but their greatest achievement, the absolute game-changer, was taming fire. Suddenly, humans weren't just helpless snacks waiting for the sun to go down. With fire, they could stay warm, fend off terrifying predators, and most importantly, host the first barbecue. Cooking meat gave us an energy surplus that made our brains grow exponentially. Homo erectus became the first human species to pack their bags, leave Africa, and boldly spread across Asia and Europe. For a while, several different human species shared the Earth, fighting, trading, and surviving in a ruthless world. But deep in Africa, the ultimate model was brewing. A species whose intelligence, ambition, and absolute ruthlessness would know no bounds. Just 300,000 years ago, under the blazing African sun, the anatomically modern human, Homo sapiens, arrived. Equipped with a top-tier brain, complex language, hello gossip, and an unstoppable drive to cooperate, this new species soon began to flood the globe. Armed with adaptability, superior tools, and a distinct lack of mercy, we slowly but surely pushed our older cousins, like the robust Neanderthals in Europe, straight into extinction. The Ice Ages retreated, and Homo sapiens crowned themselves the undisputed, unstoppable rulers of every continent and sea. In an absolute microsecond of Earth's history, we speed-ran civilization. We gave up the nomadic lifestyle, domesticated wild plants, built the first monumental cities like Uruk in Mesopotamia, and forged complex empires. We ripped the Earth's resources out of the rock, invented writing, philosophy, the internet, and space travel. A species that, just a cosmic blink ago, was hunted by giant crocodiles and sat terrified in caves, is now splitting the atom and reflecting on its own origins. We love to think of ourselves as the main characters of the universe, the absolute peak of 4.5 billion years of relentless survival. But the Earth is old, patient, and carries the scars of thousands of fallen empires and extinct species. Our cities, our wars, and our modern triumphs are nothing more than a fleeting moment on the planetary clock. The giant wheel of the continents silently keeps turning, and the story of this pale blue dot in the endless cosmos is far from over.